So there's three questions, and that's really the essence of listening to Jesus. It came from the Great Commission. You make disciples by teaching them to obey everything I commanded. Right out of the Great Commission. I had read that dozens of times, had not seen it that clearly. It's the clearest command Jesus gave that I know what he's referring to specifically. It's the Gospels, it's the red letters, and so that was the formation of this. So the first question, Lord, what are you saying to me through your word? So the focus is on red letters. What's he saying through that? So not what does it say, what is he saying to you? It's a dialogue, you and God. And one thing to keep in mind is, how do you know it's God or not somebody else? Well, it's a theologian from a couple of generations ago, J.I. Packer, who had what I think is the best definition is, God directs our minds as we think things out in his presence. So this came because I was thinking things out, I was sharing with Carrie earlier. I'd say, well, what was Jesus' time with the Father? He was always out there going out alone, get quiet. This guy could move mountains, he could raise the dead, he could still the wind and the waves. So what is prayer time like for him? He would accomplish everything on my prayer list in a minute. Do this, and it happens. And as I reflected on that, I realized what I have here, I think, is pretty much along the line of what his time with the Father was like. A time of remembering the truths of Scripture. So that's the first step, is learning what he taught and what he's saying to you. The more you do that, the more significant this next question will be, Lord, what are you saying to me through what you have allowed in my life the past day? Are there any themes I should be aware of or respond to? It's stated differently in the book that you'll receive at the end. It's not so much how it's worded, what you say, it's that you're having a conversation with God, asking him, giving him context to speak to you, as opposed to, well, here I am, Lord, talk to me. Give him, well, what are you saying about, anything that happened in your life that comes to mind? And then the third question, Lord, what do you want me to do in response? At home, at work or school, or in ministry? I have the school in there because the high schoolers, they don't have work typically. And again, it's not so important you come up with something for each of these things. The main point here is it's holistic. He's involved, wants to be involved in every part of your life. He will speak to you about every part of your life if you open the door and let him in, to give him space to do that. So that's the three keys right there. This came from the Great Commission. What do you have to communicate to somebody who perhaps can't even read to be a disciple? And these didn't come immediately at one time. As I was looking through, the bottom four, it was actually SOAE. And I said, well, Lord, E was evangelized, by the way. And I said, Lord, if you could come up with an R word here, it would spell sword, it'd be a lot easier to remember. And immediately, we are ambassadors of reconciliation came to mind. There's my R word, reconcile. So I had that, and I drew the circle. I didn't have the L2J in there, listening to Jesus, but I had at least one T. I think I had all three T's at the time I drew this satellite. And I thought, well, soar, that implies you're above, you're soaring. And so I started to change it, and immediately the thought came to mind, if you're going to soar in my kingdom, it's going to be beneath the cross. That's where a lot of ministries get out of whack. They think it's all about them. It's never about them. It's about Jesus and staying under the cross. So T-SOAR, it was initially just truth and SOAR. And then an experience I had with one of the first guys I was discipling, the chapter on surrender. Said, I don't think I could surrender my life to God. I said, why not? I'm afraid of what would happen to my kids. And I thought, and over a couple of days, the Lord said, it's because he does not trust in my goodness. There's another aspect to that as well that I'll get into a little bit later. And then time came as a result of something in my work. I was, financial advising, so I want to find out, okay, what are your goals, objectives, what assets you have, where you're trying to go, and so forth. And there were 7 steps to that. And I said, well, Lord, there's only 6 steps to TSOR. Is there another element? And immediately time came to mind. I didn't think about it. It was just boom, there it was. And I thought, how interesting that the final 2 things are still T's. So still TSOR, and it looks like Golgotha, right? 3 crosses. Christ is on the middle cross. Truth, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. That's how he got up there. And it's somewhat sequential in that you spend time, and here time means time alone with God. It doesn't mean we'll probably be here a couple of hours, not the 3 that was billed, but not that kind of time. It's time with God alone. That is critical to have, I would say, every day of your life. And you spend time with the truth, with Jesus. He's the truth. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. With God, with the Holy Spirit. He doesn't care how you refer to him. He's not offended if you say the Father, say Jesus and God. It's God. And so he's the truth. You receive revealed truth, Scripture, and the revealed truth of what he's allowing in your life. So this morning, this should show up at least as something that you experienced today. What's he saying to you through that? What did he say to you on the way here? What did he say? And just the things will come to mind. So taking that time with him, and the reason I have the extended cross down there, that is the time of your day when you are most likely to be abiding in Christ, because you are embracing his presence. He's with you 24/7. You're not with him 24/7. I don't think we can be. I try, but it can't be. But at that time, I'm welcoming his presence and having a conversation with him. That is key. And so as you're doing that, he will, there are some things he might bring to mind that require you to surrender, to give up things. In fact, to be a disciple, you have to give up everything you have to be his disciple. Not my rule, that's his rule. That's the way it works. And then learn to obey everything he commanded. That allows you to abide with him, and then to see who he might be calling you to reconcile to him, or to reconcile you more closely, to be conformed to his image. So that's why I like reconciliation better. We'll dig into these each a little bit. The other thing to note from this is, the 3 T's and the abide hang together. And I noticed that about a year ago. It just dawned on me that is one key element. But that then separates surrender and obey from reconcile. And that's also significant, because as you're spending time with him, he's going to be working in you. He's going to be showing you things, either about yourself, about others, about where you should be going, what you should be doing. You'll be on task with Jesus. So surrender and obey kind of go together. And then as he's doing that, it's typically going to lead to reconciliation of some sort, of reconciling others to Christ, of you to Christ, of you to others. So that is it. That is the 3 questions, the 7 categories. You get that down, go make disciples. Go ahead.
So when you started your financial advisory mission, was that out of the blue, or did you know how to do those things?
It was a career change. I'm a CPA. I had an accounting background. I was in the life insurance industry. Pretty sure God didn't want me there, but he said, and I kept trying to, once I became a believer, I was ready to quit right away. And he essentially didn't let me. The people thought I'd gone nuts. You stay here. And eventually I got the clue that, okay, it's not time to leave yet. But I thought, okay, should I become a pastor, become a psychologist? And God shut every door. And in frustration, I said, well, Lord, I'm pretty sure you don't want me here, but until you make it clear where I should be, I'm going to assume it's here. And felt a profound peace at that time. So and then I in addition to CPA, I'm a chartered financial consultant, which is kind of like a CFP. It's a life insurance designation. I mean, it comes from that group, but it's the same background as a CFP has. And taking that, some other things, God stirred things up to make it clear it's time to leave. And it just was abundantly clear because I was going 100% salary to 100% commission, not the easiest thing to do. But so I said, well, Lord, if it's really you, do this. That's called fleecing. And he did. I said, well, what about this? Boom. And so I said, okay, this is the door. So I walk in it. But so I learned, I've continued to learn there. I've continued to learn in discipleship. It's progressive revelation, I guess I call it, near time. So did that answer your question, Lisa? Or
Oh, no, I was just wondering, is it okay if I take a picture of it?
Everything I have, if people want to buy books, they pay for books. That goes to 28 Ministries, actually. But this is all freely available online, and we've, for anybody that has access to the links, and we share those freely with anybody. One of the barriers I've run into is we have books. You get a book here, and we have another book, Listening to Jesus Reflections. It's the teachings of Jesus over 24 weeks. And we are used to, well, I've done that, now what? Right. The first time we trained in Rwanda in 2004, I got to follow up on that training a year later and said, well, what do we do now? Well, you go back through. He didn't say to learn what he taught. He said, learn to obey everything I commanded. And so far, that has taken me a lifetime. I'm still learning.
Well, I think that's where having trust in Jesus and his timing comes into play. Because it's not, I think we're in such this Amazon, look, I need it right now.
Right.
And a mindset that that's not what God is not like a concession stand or something. You've got to patiently wait for what he has planned for you in your life.
Bingo.
That's really good, Sophia.
Yeah, and I quote the theologian Mick Jagger. He doesn't always give what you want. You get what you need. And God does speak to me through rock music too. Lots of revelation. He can speak through anything. So the one thing I'd say, you go through, and then you go through again, and then you go through again. It only takes 15 minutes a day for the 3 questions on average, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. It will improve every other thing you're trying to do in your life if you take that time and get that revelation. Not every day is going to be, he had a great banquet experience, a great weekend, mountaintop experience. Some days will be that way, not every day. So persist. And what happens is every time through, you go deeper with Jesus. So it's not new books to go through, new studies to go through. It's the same one with the same person, and he will take you progressively deeper. I've just finished my 44th time through, and he's got me on Easter readings for a couple of weeks, and then I'll be back on time 45. But the reason there are barriers is that we live in enemy-occupied territory. What we see out here in the world, it's a mess. It wasn't created to be a mess. We've made it a mess. The enemy got in, he's disrupted. The good thing is that our Father is at work to this very day, as Jesus said, and we must see what's he doing. He's about bringing reconciliation, to bringing health and wholeness back to this world, and that's what he's wanting to use us to do. That's what a disciple does. It's got the antennas up for what is God doing here. I see what he's doing.
When you talk about discipleship, are you talking about bringing new people to Christianity or Christians that say they're Christians but they don't have a relationship with God? Is that all sort of in the discipleship?
It's anything that you can do to bring somebody closer to an intimate relationship with Jesus is discipleship. I specifically have in mind getting them into learning to obey what he commanded and increasingly see how he's speaking through things of life. But it's new believers, it's old believers, it's anybody, any person of peace. And a person of peace is somebody who's ready for what you have to offer. What we have to offer as a Listening to Jesus community is a way to connect with him intimately on a daily basis, because you're different than me. There isn't an answer for each problem other than what he reveals to you, because he's revealing to you as a unique person, and you need to reach that unique person, that other person, they're unique. How do you heal a blind person? Whatever the Father says. Here's mud in your eye, be healed any number of ways, but it's because of who the person is the recipient of this. So there isn't a right answer other than one revealed to you as you go.
I was going to say that regardless of what's going on in your life or another person's life, it's your choice as to how you respond. So, as I said, like last year, I would have reacted in a completely different way than I do this year because of the trust that I have in him and his plans for me, and other people see that. Because they'll see all the craziness that I still go through, but they see the fact that I react differently. So then that creates dialogue as to, why aren't you freaking out? Well, I have no reason to freak out because things are meant to be, God has this intended at this point in time, and I have to accept it and find joy in it, because for me, he's trying to teach me something. Or he's trying to teach the other person something, and maybe in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm modeling this behavior, so hopefully this other person will also pick up on it and see the peace that I have in my life.
Remember what she says. She's jumping ahead of my notes. That's what I call the paradigm shift that listening to Jesus will give you. Instead of why me, what are you teaching me?
Not having that victim mentality.
It is a game changer as far as how you emotionally respond to life. You look with intrigue. Whoa, even evil. Okay, Lord, you've allowed this. So what do you do? What do you have here? But the next slide is first barrier. Each of these 7, incidentally, that was something I struggled with. What the barriers should I discuss? And eventually the Lord said, each of the 7 categories has its own barrier. So this barrier, time, busyness, I can't tell you how many people say, well, I just don't have time. I've got so much on my plate. Well, who put it there? And this is original with me as far as Claude is concerned. Claude's the AI engine I use most. If you can't find 15 minutes each day to spend with the only one who can make sense of your life, how do you know that what you are so busy doing is what you should be doing? What I found the paradox of listening to Jesus, of taking that, I use 15 minutes again, it varies, but taking that time is, it gives me more time. I have more capacity, time capacity, than anybody I know for somebody who works 2 full-time jobs. One full-time job is not really, none of my job's 9 to 5, but the disciple making is 24/7. I have a lot of capacity. I'm not hurried. How often was Jesus in a hurry? 0 is the right answer. There's always time to do the will of God. I thought that was original with me, but Claude said, no, Elizabeth beat you to it. I have a corollary, though. There is only time to do the will of God. Because if you're not doing God's will, you're at least straying from the course, straying from your path a little bit. And so, how do you overcome this? Well, one way is you make it a priority. Some people have found putting it on their calendar at whatever time works for you. 6:30 in the morning, I have an appointment with Jesus. I can't change that. So if somebody wants to schedule a meeting, say, well, I'm sorry, I have something scheduled and it can't be moved. So they protect the time. So make it a priority. Distraction. I did change pockets on my speaker thing here, so I have my pocket idol here. So I can go through here and I can waste well more than 15 minutes if I let it. So we have this, Jesus didn't have that problem. We do. And you never leave home without it, right? So we have things, distractions, the busyness, we have things to do at home, at work, in ministry, legitimate things. But listen to Jesus first. That's the Martha and Mary problem. Martha had stuff to do. Had Jesus come here, I better get to work. And Mary said, well, talk to me, Jesus, teach me. And I always thought, well, what if Martha had also sat there and listened? Food would have been served. He might have made it. Just think about that. But anyway, we want to be distracted. And some people don't. They feel uncomfortable with silence. You have to get over that. Father knows everything about you. You're not hiding anything from him. He loves you despite who you are. We are sinners saved by grace. Hopefully we sin less, but we are never going to be perfect in this life. And he loves us and will use us, even though we've fallen time after time. Part of the barrier, I think, is actually unbelief. I don't see Jesus sitting around this table here. No, that's not Jesus. I don't see the enemy. I don't see the enemy either. Now, he may or may not be here because he can't bilocate. God can bilocate. He's everywhere. But if I told you that right after this is over, Jesus in the flesh, going to be at Starbucks here on the intersection up here, where are you going to be? You weren't planning to be there. That's where you're going to be. Well, I'll tell you, he's here. He is here. And this morning in the reading I had, I always thought about Jesus going off to be alone to pray. But in what I was reading where he's saying, well, who do others say that I am? He was in prayer with his disciples there, but he was in prayer with the Father, even though the disciples are in that area. You're going to have that experience today. We're going to listen to Jesus with people around. But he did that, in the moment. He is always here. He is always available, 24/7, knocking at the door. And so often as you open it up, he will listen to you, and he will converse with you. Just have something to ask him. He loves questions. He seems to. So next slide will get us to truth. And thoughts come. They're coming into your mind. Where do they come from? You have over 10,000 thoughts a day. Some people say up to 60 or 70. I don't know who's counting, really, but 10,000 seems to be the low level of the thoughts. They can come from a number of sources, and this isn't only three, but these are the big three. They're going to either be God's voice, your voice, or the enemy's voice. I rarely say, I know God spoke to me. Sometimes it's pretty darn clear, but I say, well, I suspect this is what he is saying to me. And so God's voice is consistent with Scripture. He's not going to contradict himself. It may not be in the Bible, but it's consistent with what's in the Bible. It will bring perhaps conviction if you need to make a decision, and hope. It'll lead toward obedience. The big one here, I would underscore this, accompanied by peace. And that's, if you go to the other side, the enemy's voice, if it's condemnation, accusation, discouragement, that's coming from the pit of hell. That is not God speaking to you. But he will use people who don't know him very well. Yeah, that's God talking to you here. But I don't think this crowd will be taken in with that. But the fourth one, disguised as God's voice. He knows about you. He knows what can tempt you. And so he'll come with subtle ways to speak to you. And he used that with Peter, that he come wisdom with Jesus. So you're the Christ. Get thee behind me, Satan, within 2 verses. So Jesus could discern, that's not coming from my Father. That's coming from human wisdom and the enemy putting that into his mind. So it might be your voice. It is your head, by the way. And it might come from what you prefer. It may come from reasoning, and that's where you get to rationalization. Well, here's what God's saying. Well, I think he might have meant this. So we're not thinking things out in his presence. We're thinking things out in our presence. Emotions can come in play, but also be aware that he can use your desires. Just because you want something, give a preference, doesn't mean it's not God. He may use your legitimate desires, things you're attracted to lead you. So it is, I will say this one is trial and error. If you suspect it's God, you're uncertain, ask him to confirm it, and be willing to be a fool for Christ, to take a risk and to do what you think he's calling you to do. You're going to be wrong some of the time. At least I have been, certainly.
Can you give an example of like a scenario of the enemy's voice?
Peter, Lord, this ain't going to happen to you. You're not going to be crucified. That was the enemy's voice coming through Peter. Peter, very impulsive, and said, I don't want Jesus dying on me here. So this won't happen. We'll keep this from happening. He's also the one that had the sword to cut off the ear of the person in the garden. Very protective sword, but impulsive. And so not listening, but acting first. So it can come, there's too many ways it can come. Trying to discern the voice of God, there have been a lot of books written on them. I've read a few. We don't have time here to get into much detail. So these are, so these are just ways to try to get closer to discerning. So trust runs underneath all of these, by the way. It's some level of lack of trust. I mentioned the trust in the goodness of God, but also trust in, some people have had horrible experiences. I had a homeless lady lived with us a couple of weeks, thanks to my number 2 son. And her mother committed suicide when she was 11. She's divorced, and that's just the beginning. And so how can I trust a God who allows this to happen? Well, again, we're in enemy-occupied territory. This is not the world the Father created. He allows this stuff, does not cause it. And so, but you can get a bad view of God and non-trusting because of not having enough information. The other thing, and this is experience around the world in the church here, and I don't have stats on this, but I'd say if you walk into church, any church service, and I don't care if it's at Mercy Road, at Traders Point, at East 91st Street, you won't find 1 in 10 that is ready to be all in with Jesus, to be a disciple. That's different than being a believer. I'm not saying they're not saved. I'm saying they're not ready for discipleship. They don't believe what Jesus said to the rich young ruler. Leave everything. If you want to be perfect, leave it all. Come follow me. Yeah, I'll obey the 10 Commandments. I'm not ready to be. He had it going on. He had a good business and whatever. But you will not fail to receive 100 times as much in this present age, in this life, and then eternal life. I can testify that's true. It is so much better than anything I could ask or imagine. And I would never have it if I said, that's too much. You're asking too much. So that is a barrier. And someone I mentioned that all we can control is our reaction to things. The rich young ruler didn't want to give up control because he thought he had control. That's an illusion. You don't control anything other than possibly your response. You don't control the next breath you get. So that is an illusion. So now I can shut up here, and we'll go to the next slide. And I will read this, but it's really a prayer. And it's a time for you to, if you don't have a journal with you, take a piece of paper here. If you have a pen there, and just reflect with the Lord and write down what He brings to your mind. Trust that He will bring something to your mind as you reflect on, Lord, as I reflect on my struggles with finding time for you, discerning truth with you, trusting your goodness and that you have a better plan for me, fully embracing your presence, bring to my mind what you want to reveal to me. So we'll take a few minutes and just ponder and jot down the thoughts that come to your mind.
I mean, do you know, I go through all these things, I feel like health insurance, all the expenses, it's like, how do I, on an Enneagram?
Okay, I hate to cut short discussion, but in the interest of time, can you advance to the next slide? I got to surrender to the constraints we have. And surrender is conveniently the next thing topic to discuss here. And as I said before, trust underscores all of this. Trusting in He really is present here, of even His leading, what He's calling you to do, and that's, when I had the revelation, this guy was concerned about what would happen to his kids if he surrendered his life. I thought, well, of course, you're not going to willingly surrender your life to anybody or anything that you don't trust. Now, you might be at the force of a gun or whatever, but you're not willingly going to do it. In my business, I manage my own discretionary basis. If they don't trust me, they're not going to say, well, you can do whatever you want to, and within the constraints, but they have to have that level of trust to surrender to signing on the dotted line. Jesus asked us to do the same thing. So if you're going to obey God, you have to surrender something, either your time, your money, reputation even. And I listed a few things on here. And even in my own life, I could have come to Christ a lot earlier. I was 29 years old, almost 30. I had a Sunday school teacher that taught me what surrender of my life meant. And there were two barriers that I can recall coming back. One, I didn't want to be that goody-goody guy in high school and grade school. I want to be I wasn't really a bad boy, but I'm kind of a bad boy. And I wasn't ready to give up control of that. But the other thing that concerned me, this lady had a mission, at least occasionally she'd gone to Africa. I thought, he might send me to Africa. There is no way I'm ready for that. So I was afraid he'd send me to Africa. And so that held me back. And so this hat was given to me in the Kibera slum in January. I've been to Africa 6 times. So I was right to fear that. I just missed the part that he ain't going to put you anywhere he doesn't want you and will bless you being. But what I find is the third item here, that at our first birth, we are totally dependent upon our caregivers. Hopefully our parents, but not for everybody had that, but somebody. And totally dependent. But we learned independence pretty darn quickly. By age 2 or 3, terrible 2s, we learned it. And by 16, we perfected that. We are ready to be on our own. You don't tell me what to do. And some have learned unhealthy behaviors to protect themselves. They had to learn to be independent, guard yourself, because they're out to get you. And so so it could be drugs, alcohol, it could be anything, just addictions to whatever. And so at our second birth, you must be born again. And I think we think of that, that's my conversion. Well, it starts at your conversion, but it is a new way of thinking, as Bob Dylan sang it. Gotta get myself a new way of thinking. And we have to learn to be totally dependent upon God and God alone. I'm just so wired into us. For me, that's the hardest part. I'm not intentionally rebellious. I've learned this and to give it all up, to relearn that. So now, go ahead.
Well, culture is number 3. That's what culture tells you to be.
Well, yeah, be your own man. I did it my way.
Yeah.
That sort of, that's true. And you deserve it too, by the way. So, what do we deserve? We deserve obedience. Interesting. One thing that as you start paying attention to what God allows in your life, you just see things you've never seen before. And what was you reading about this morning in Oswald Chambers?
Oh gosh, I drove about this morning.
Yeah, it was about
Very specific.
It was about obedience.
Yes.
And that how we will maybe rationalize what God is saying, that we will, yes, it is, but I think he means that. And I alluded to it before, but we will procrastinate. I will do it. Okay, I know you want me to do this, Lord, but I'll get to it. Rationalization, reinterpret what I said, fear of failure, selective obedience, those things. If you don't know, aren't certain of what God's asking you to do, it's okay to clarify. I mean, if you generally don't, I'm uncertain, are you being this, Lord, or this? So clarify that. Even Jesus had his Gethsemane moment. Said, you're going to the cross. And so he prayed about it, he was sweating blood. You could actually do that, by the way. And said, is there not another way? And the Father said, no, there isn't. So he clarified, and that's okay to do if you have doubts about what God is doing. And sometimes, like in my career change, I knew that's what he wanted me to do. I didn't know why exactly. But then later on, I was preparing a talk for men's ministry at the church I was attending on finances. And somewhere in that 2 or 3 week window, he made it clear to me that I was not going to retire. I don't know how I wasn't journaling regularly at that point in time, but I thought, okay, well, I accepted that fine. It allowed me to make some changes. I had no discipleship ministry in view at that point. Later, I had that, and it made sense. I had to have the career change to have the financial wherewithal to then continue working to continue to fund what's going on and around the world, particularly in Africa. I mentioned something, I think, in the British Isles that's going on, something here locally. That will become self-funding. Africa isn't likely to in my lifetime anyway. So the Lord has inspired me to do that. So taking steps of obedience, even though you don't see the end result, you rarely will. You will see the next step. But unless you take that step, you won't see the next one. Our vision, maybe I said this, is to reach every person of peace, our oversight team, every person of peace in the world by 2039. That is, by the way, an impossible thing for me to do, for Carrie to do, for Eric to do. But I feel like God inspired that. He didn't say, I'm going to live to 2039. That's going to be, I'm getting up there now. That'll be even more so. But what I understand he was me to plan is if we're going to do this, and he reminded me, by the way, nothing is impossible with me. And that's where the use, I think, of what I call the harder teaching of Jesus. Ask anything in my name, but you're asking in line with what he's revealed to you to do, some impossible thing for you to do. And it is impossible unless he's the one really doing it, just using us as a vehicle to do it. So my only concern is just being obedient to what the next step he's shown me. And sometimes he moves a lot faster than I'm ready to go. Sometimes I'm usually running ahead of him, but he's got the lead right now, I think, on what we're doing. But so my job is simply to do the next thing. And this workshop was the next thing. And I suspect it has something to do, we're going to Houston in a couple of weeks, that in meeting with church people interested in discipleship around the U.S. I don't know yet what that next step is, but I think this has something to do with it anyway. So next slide, please. And we will take a few minutes again to journal your thoughts and come to mind for this question. Lord, is there something in my life now I struggle to surrender to you, or an act of obedience that you've revealed to me that I have not yet done? So have a little shorter time to reflect on this. There's a couple of pretty pointed things, and he probably will bring to mind fairly quickly if there is something. So again, just share, the two of you, pair up again, and just what did the Lord bring to your mind as far as either a struggle that you have with specific surrender or obedience, if you're willing to share. Again, maybe something else, I'm not going to share this, but so share generally if that's the case.
As I mentioned earlier, is procrastination. I'm not procrastinating something.
Yes, and he's giving you.
So we are now ready for reconcile. And this is where all this is heading. It's time with Jesus, listening to him, the surrender of obedience. He wants you to find the ripe fruit that's out there, and he wants you to be the ripe fruit that's out there. So there's three aspects to reconciliation. The first one is the one I first identified, evangelize. That's why it was an E word. But he wants that. He wants new believers. I think as far as Abby's question, who we're looking for with this, I think the potentially ripest fruit are people who are not yet following Jesus at all. They may be ripe fruit all ready to be plucked off the tree. The other most likely suspect are people already involved in ministry, because they've sensed the call at some level, but they need something to help them go deeper. And so I think they're ready for discipleship. They may just need a little guidance. The person in the pew been attending for 20 years, goes to Bible studies, and maybe in a small group of some sort, get together and socialize. Probably not. But you'll be some there. Potentially anybody. Just keep your antenna tuned for who it might be. So bringing other people into a relationship. You to others is a relationship in your life that's broken. A hard conversation you need to have, something you need to heal, forgive. And Jesus forgave them for doing what shouldn't have been done to them. They know not what they're doing. Anybody who does anything to create a rift really doesn't understand what they're doing, the significance of that. So forgive and bring restoration. Go to the people if that's what God puts on your mind. One fellow, an African pastor, was introduced just to the book with a guy from the Navigators, and he gave a testimony. He said, "This, I think, is the hardest book I've ever gone through, not because of the content, but because of the obedience required." That apparently he had a rift with the relationship with his father, and it healed that. So that it almost brings tears to my eyes when I hear those sorts of things. Like, thank you, Jesus. And so you to God, sanctification, being conformed to God's image. He wants us to look increasingly like God, like Jesus. And he can reveal things in our lives that blind spots to us, he can bring them to light. So that's what he's doing. And one person, we mentioned forgiveness in the previous one person that's hardest for most people to forgive, if it's needed, is themselves. We've all done things that we could reflect on and say, wow. And you can't forgive yourself because you're the one that did it. It wasn't them doing it to you. God forgives you. He just forgives you. That is part of the good news. That's great news. In my Damascus Road conversion, middle of the night, reading scriptures, and there's a backstory to that, but I was reading in Luke 7:48, sinful woman at Jesus' feet, your sins are forgiven. I heard that. I mean, it wasn't, I didn't imagine, I heard that, and I felt like a 200-pound weight just came off my chest. I fell over in tears. I can't explain it, but I had done decades worth of bad stuff. So I was a bad boy in a sense, prodigal son. He forgives anything. We just come to him to accept the gift he has.
Question.
Yep.
So what if you're I'm one of these that have really struggled with this all my life. I'm doing better now. I truly understand how much the Lord loves me.
Yeah.
But I have that critical voice. It's the enemy, and I do know that. That lies within, because it's feisty. And I work with a lot of people that are also on that level of just, they get that God loves them. But I wonder, when you're dealing with all of this and you're making disciples and you're helping people get to that deeper level, how do you work with someone or help them when that critical voice it just rears its ugly?
Yeah. Well, the one thing you apparently have done is recognize it is from the pit of hell. It isn't God. So that's one thing, and helping people walk through that. But I will say, I have very few answers. I have answers for me that God reveals to me. And that's part of, to me, is paying attention to what we'll get to, the second question we had. What are you saying to me through what you've allowed? That is where God is going to ultimately speak to you most directly, is these things, and we may have the same experience. He will speak to us differently from that experience. What's he saying to me? And he's working something in your life that he knows, and he knows what you need. He knows how you hear. And so he will engineer things that will resonate with you. And so I just say, pay attention, continue listening to Jesus, and continue reflecting with him on things. I will share one story. When Eric and Nick, that was my film crew, to Africa, and we were at the airport getting B-roll background roll. I figured that out myself. But there's that sculpture out there that's it's a script N-D-Y, like Indy, except it doesn't have the I. You become the I, the film up. So they got me standing there. Well, Eric was standing there, and I'm off to the side. And a lady about David's age, he said, excuse me, yeah, old. Not as old as me, but old. But I happen to know how old he is. So that because she's exactly your age, actually. But she said, "Do you work here?" And I thought for a second. I said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, I do." I said, "I have 2 full-time jobs. One's managing money. That's not what I'm doing here. The other one's making disciples. That's what I'm doing here." And she said, "What?" I said, "Well, I'm making disciples." And she seemed confused. I said, "Well, have you heard of Jesus?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, he said make disciples. So that's what I'm doing out here." And so she seemed genuinely interested. So we had a 5 to 10 minute conversation, and she walked away with a book. I mentioned this story last night, so it's kind of anticlimactic because I don't know if she ever registered. We don't know if we would know, but she at least heard it. So that's one person we've explained listening to Jesus to. So whether she responds, it's not on me. That's on me to present to her. But be looking for opportunities that God will put into your life. We're going to have Perry give a brief testimony because I've had 25 years or so of this, and she's had more like 3. Mm-hmm. So what's it meant to you, and do you have anything else you'd like to share?
Yes, like Joe said, I've been listening to Jesus and practicing this for about 3 years, but it was a good year before that Joe and another one of my good friends, Dan, had invited me to do it. But back then, I consulted with me, myself, and I said, I'm too busy, I've got 2 young kids, I don't have time to do another, whatever it was. But after a year of them just continually checking in, I did say yes, and I can say listening to Jesus has been such a blessing. It is a gift, and it has completely changed my life. Even, past 20 years of my adult life, I have gotten up early, read the Bible, attended church, I've led in the cafe, I've attended small groups, thinking I was doing all the things I was supposed to be doing. But what I realized was I was doing all the talking, and I was not doing any listening or creating any space to hear what Jesus was trying to tell me through my circumstances. And just by nature, I am a very routine, schedule, checklist. I like my days to go the way that I've planned them. And when I did not check all the boxes off my list, and when my day went differently than I thought, I would get stressed and I would get anxious. And that is one thing that this has taught me, is that I now, every day, I surrender my day to Jesus. I surrender my to-do list. And when things don't go the way, not only do I have peace about it, but I can also ask him, Jesus, what am I supposed to be learning? What are you teaching me through all this? And I will share, again, I've been doing this for 3 years, but the last 3 months of my life has been the most difficult part of my life. My sister, who's one of my best friends, has been out of the blue diagnosed with stage 4 terminal cancer. And there's no way I could walk through this season with her with as much peace that I've been given. And I'm being able to lead and walk her. She's a believer, but not exactly to the extent that the conversations we've had. And also just, he's been able for me to see all the beauty that he's given me in these last 3 months with her, all the time we've been able to spend with each other. And again, like what you were saying, it's not a victim of why is this happening? It's Jesus, what are you showing me to this? What do you align with these circumstances? And it's been some of the hardest 3 months, but some of the most beautiful at the same time too. So it's been a gift. And it's a non-negotiable in my life. I have to, that's the one thing. If everything else messes up in my day or I don't get done, I have to sit with him in the morning for him to lead and guide me and show me what he wants to do. And then and Joe and I had this conversation this morning, kind of how we journal a little differently. When I first start and I sit down, I spend time at the beginning, almost like a diary. And that was a good word to use, is I write down what happened in the last 24 hours, because he speaks to everybody different. But to me, a lot of times it's through thoughts, through nudges, through repetition, or just noticing things through my day, wildlife or a song or whatever it is. So I write a diary almost first, then I go through the readings, and then I go through the questions. And that number 2 question, what's been happening in the past 24 hours, is kind of like my guide. And at the end of the week, I go through the highlighter and I just highlight themes that I see throughout the week. And that's kind of how he speaks to me and leads me and guides me.
Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Don't you feel better already? Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So just ponder that, maybe reread it, and what is the Lord, what's he bringing to your mind? What's he saying to you? What's he revealing to you out of the scripture?
But one of the things I struggle with is like work stress. It can linger, it can really kind of eat at me, or especially if I feel like I get something wrong, like it can be on repeat in my head for a while. But reading this morning and going through this exercise, it's kind of like, and my word for the year is abide. So what I'm hearing today is that, hey, this is the recipe to abide. And if I first come to him, so first I'm being obedient, coming to him. And then 2, I take his yoke. To me, that's abiding, right? Whatever that yoke is for today.
Yep.
And then learn from me is reconcile. Like what are you teaching me through this, right? And that's drawing me closer to him, and then potentially also, what he wants me to do outwardly with it to others, or to myself,
Right.
for myself.
Well, I've said somebody that every morning, as you go through the exercise, and not necessarily the verse, but the next part of this, it's about you, but it's about you and your relationship with him, and him developing you. And the way he makes it clear to me is the next exercise. Flip that up here. This is question 2. It's stated differently than the bookmark. This is how it is in the book, actually. And by the way, if like the things of life that come to us, your life comes at you fast. Remember that commercial? It does. So you have your sister, stage 4. Oh, wow, I did not see that. My brother-in-law, who died 6 months ago, I was out to dinner with he and his wife, my wife and he. Really enjoyed the time. Thought I'm going to do this regularly with them. He was diagnosed with prostate cancer, which I think of being slow moving. He's dead today. He died a week ago. And so life comes at you fast. I wished I could have prayed, fasted, and saved Mark's life. He's a great guy. A man of God. I'm sure he's in the arms of Jesus, or, in heaven now. But I couldn't do that. I prayed for Julie. I don't know. There's hope, still hope. But we don't know. It's not in our hands. It's our hands to obey what he's calling us to do, and he will speak specifically to us through what he allows in our life. So what he said to me through thoughts, circumstances, conversations, emotions, the work of the enemy. As you reflect on these things, and what I do is on my sheet, what you see in front of that 8.5 by 11 paper, that's my journal paper. So for each day, I put in, here's my readings of the day, here's the date, and I put to the left H, middle W, right-hand side M, homework and ministry. So what happens? For this exercise, think about the last 24 hours and what in particular stands out. What one thing or one theme, because sometimes you get you see a whole picture here of what he's painting, and other times it's one thing. So what is the one thing that stands out? And now spend some time, okay, Lord, this happened. Talk to me. What are you wanting me to see here, to know here? Is something I should be doing. Just have a conversation about that thing that stood out. The power of spot fires. What you've experienced around the table is what you'd experience as a spot fire. Fellowship of other believers who are listening to Jesus, so they can do what it says here. They can provide encouragement, accountability, wisdom, because they've had experiences you haven't. You share that. And multiplication, maybe feel led to start other groups. I have a group starting actually Monday, the 30th, in Reelsville, Indiana. I'd never heard of it either. It's even more obscure than Jay County, but that's where Eric's from. They bought 10 copies of the book you're getting for free here, and said, is there a leader's guide? I said, well, no, but if you go to the chapter on spot fires, and the beginning of that actually gives, if you want to start a group, here's how you do it. This was intended, this book is intended, you can take this if you're literate, and you can use it right away to start making disciples. You don't have to have an MDiv. You don't have to have any real knowledge or even what Jesus taught. Just take the book, find some people willing to come together with you, and you share with each other like you did around the table here, and trust that Jesus will disciple you as you disciple each other to a degree. It is not hard. It's really not hard. One thing I found though, and I saw it here as we were sharing, I hated to interrupt because the sharing is important. You will not have time to share, even with this small of a spot fire, everything Jesus has been talking to you. If you start listening, you have a number of things each day. I said, just focus on one thing or one theme. Today, I had 4 or 5 things. It takes a while. So if we each have that every day, you're not going to get it all done. So what I've landed on, and actually Joel inspired this, a comment he'd made, he was in the Thursday group for a while, that we try to text before the group meeting, so we meet at 8, so sometime before that, 4 things. 1, how did you do with last week's top priority? What you felt like was the top priority of all the things you have to do here. What do you think is God's number 1 for you? So how did you do with that? Number 2 is, what is it for next week? What's the number 1 priority? So that we can pray for each other. We can, it's a light accountability. We don't shame anybody. Well, you didn't get that done. They would just get with it, But it does, I found it helps me to, okay, I've committed to, here's what it is. And so, Lord, help me. The third thing is, what's the number 1 thing you got out of this week's readings? So you had 7 of them, at least 6. It depends on the book, actually, 6 or 7. So what was the number 1 thing from the readings? And then what about circumstances of life? You had circumstances all day long. God will speak to you about some of them. So what was the most significant thing he revealed? That way, by having a text there, even if the person can't attend, you have an update from them. And if they can attend, then we can help channel the discussion, because in an hour and a half, that can go fairly quickly if you're trying to share that. So what is the important things to be shared with that? So hopefully you gain something from this, but the book has a lot more in it that we don't have time to cover. That this is the skeleton that anybody can take and use and put their sinews and muscles on it from their life.